Warning. This podcast may prove to be damaging to the comfort of closely held presuppositions. Remember to practice Acts 17:11 and examine the scriptures daily to see whether these things are so.
Is changing rapidly. Wars and rumors of wars are abundant. Civil unrest, economic collapse, a global economic reset, natural disasters, and the second coming of Jesus Christ is on the horizon. Are you prepared? Welcome to Truth Fed.
Greetings and welcome back to the broadcast. Today is Monday, March 30th, 2015. I am Sean and the website is truthfed.com. And today we have a guest. We're going to be talking about a very strange but interesting topic. We're going to be discussing Planet X or Nibiru. Now, I have to be honest, when I first started hearing about Planet X, I was pretty skeptical about it. I didn't warm up to it very quickly, which looking back didn't make much sense because there's a lot of historical evidence, scientific evidence, ancient text, and biblical scripture evidence. And I think the reason that I personally had trouble warming up to this is the same reason that the masses around the world have trouble warming up to any new theory or idea, is because it challenges your worldview, your view on how things really are, or your view of what has actually taken place throughout history. So I would plead with you to have an open mind about this topic, about this discussion, and make sure you take some time to research it on your own. And joining me today, and probably for a couple of episodes to discuss the topic of Planet X, is a friend of mine who has spent a lot of time doing his homework on the subject. Joining me is Michael Bertram. Michael, how's it going?
It's going good, Sean.
It's going good. Just to get the conversation started, and then I'll just kind of give you the floor for the most part, other than maybe interjecting some questions, is maybe you can just explain to us what is Planet X and why we even need to know about it.
Well, for the most part, I was really skeptical about the whole theory of Planet X too. What really got my interest is I came across a chart that this person, his name's Gil Prashard, he had made this chart which charted through the entire Bible. So that really opened me up to looking at it more. As I dove deeper, the evidence just kept coming out. So there's a ton of different names for Planet X, Nibiru. The Sumerians call it the Nibiru. The Incans call it Herculopus. The Kolbrin calls it the Destroyer. The Babylonians call it the Marduk. List just goes on and on.
Yeah. Now, as far as so basically, there's this theory that there's this planet out there, and there's evidence, and I'm going to have you kind of give us what that evidence is, that it's been here before. Through ancient texts, through ancient artifacts. But let's start with, what about biblically? I mean, what evidence is there in the Bible that this thing exists?
Okay, yeah, so all throughout the Bible, looking at Noah's flood, the Tower of Babel, Sodom and Gomorrah, even Joseph going to Egypt, it's in there too. Exodus of Egypt, all the way, it's all through the Bible, up to Jonah's time, and all the way even to Jesus' crucifixion and in Revelation. And this planet is like a comet, and it has a comet's orbit around our sun. And so for every roughly 390-something years, this planetary system, it's basically a sun with 5 to 7 planets around it, and it has a comet's tail, and it comes around our solar system every 300-something years, and every time it comes back around, something historical has always happened with it.
Can you give us some examples?
Let's see. Noah's flood is probably the biggest example that everybody knows about. Sodom and Gomorrah, the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah with it raining fire and brimstone is a good example also. And then if you look all through the book of Revelation, it talks about fire and meteorites and hail, all that stuff coming down. So that's all related to that too.
So the theory is that this planet, it's got an orbit around the sun, kind of like a meteor has. And there is, I mean, even NASA has records of certain meteorites that have like a 100 or 200 year cycle. You know, so
yeah,
it gets skipped.
The person, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
The person who I really kicked it all off with was Zechariah Sitchin's book, and he talks about a 3,600 year cycle. But if you take that and you line it up with the events in the Bible, nothing matches up correctly. So when I found this other chart this man had made, Gil Burchard is his name. He does an awesome job of getting the cycle right, because when they interpreted the Sumerian text, they didn't have zeros in their language, so you basically had to guess on the time span of when this thing came back around.
Well, okay, so what about, I want to get more into the biblical stuff, obviously,
okay,
as far as this is concerned, but just real quick, what information have you found as far as just like ancient cultures, and why, you know, what evidence is there that points that at some point they saw some terrifying huge planet coming into the solar system that wreaked havoc on the Earth?
Okay, a good example is the Mayans. Everybody knows the whole 2012 end of the world Mayan calendar.
Right.
Well, if you look at their actual calendar, along the outer rim of that calendar is this planetary body that comes back around, which is, you can call it Planet X, Nibiru, whatever you want. Their count for each time it came around was called a Baktun. And there has been evidence that they are correct with their calculations, the Mayans were, because one Baktun is roughly 390-something years. And that's what is believed that took out the Mayan culture.
So there's a belief that this planet coming into the system is what caused the destruction?
Yeah, the Mayan culture. There's also, you can get into Atlantis, the sinking of Atlantis, or if you want to stick with the Bible, you got Sodom and Gomorrah, and Tower of Babel, and all that. And then, of course, it'll be in our time when it comes back around for Revelation.
So you believe that some of the things that we see in Revelation, like some of the natural disasters, the Earth being tilted off of its axis, and just all these weird things happening, you think could be related to this planet that comes back into the solar system?
Yeah, because when this planet comes back around and it gets in our orbital path, it's like a large magnet, and our Earth is polarized with the North Pole, South Pole. So this planet is like a larger magnet. So when it gets close, our poles will tilt toward the larger magnet, which causes the Earth to tilt, which you see, it says in Revelation that all the islands and mountains were moved out of place, which is the poles shifting. So if you look at the map and the poles shifted, the islands won't be in the same place they were.
Okay. Now, as far as biblical text is concerned, I mean, I know we can speculate that, you know, maybe what rained down on Sodom and Gomorrah was caused by this, and some other examples. But is there any examples in the biblical text of the star itself, like it literally describing this thing in the sky?
Yeah, we can see. let's talk about the Star of Bethlehem. It's a good example. When the Magi traveled to the east, the theories on that were it was a supernova or it was a constellation of stars, and nothing would add up with that theory because they followed this star in the heavens. But a supernova would only be bright for so long before it would dissipate, and same thing for a constellation of stars. And if you go to the book of Jasher, it actually mentions that for Abraham when he was born, that there was a star in the sky that engulfed everything, and then in his lifetime was also when you had the event of Sodom and Gomorrah.
Right, that's true, yeah. I'm trying to remember what book it's in, and maybe you can remember that Noah himself says that he noticed that the earth had shifted, and that's how he knew that it was time to get into the ark. Yeah,
that was in the book of Enoch.
Book of Enoch.
When it talked about the fragment of Noah, and it says, in those days Noah saw the earth had tilted, and that its destruction was near. And he set off from there and went to the ends of the earth and cried to his grandfather. So yeah, it was, the whole earth had tilted. And if you look in the book of Jasher, it also says that on that day, the Lord caused the whole earth to shake. The sun was darkened, and the foundations of the world raged. The whole earth was moved violently. Lightning flashed and thunder roared, and all the fountains of the earth were broken up. Such was not known to the inhabitants before, and God did this mighty act in order to terrify the sons of men. So there we have another reference to Revelation, where the sun and the earth was shaken, darkened. And then if you go actually back to Genesis, it talks about how it rained for, by the time it started raining, by the time it ended, was 150 days. And if you go into Revelation, it talks about how men will be tortured for 5 months, which is roughly the same time frame.
Right. So I'm just trying to get a grasp on this. I know that, and we're using some biblical text and some extra biblical, but every book that we've mentioned, if you can go to eBay right now, and you can look for a Bible from the 1600s or earlier, and I've done this because I was curious, and without failure, every one of them includes the Apocrypha, the book of Jasher, the book of Esdras and Second Esdras, and I believe in Second Esdras, and you can confirm this for me. It literally talks about, and Second Esdras is just a book filled with end time prophecy. And it talks about a star and people being terrified of it. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, it does.
So
I actually don't have it.
Well, here I'll just pull it up here using this application here. So I mean, there's all kinds of just ancient writings about this, and maybe you can get into it more, of just describing, I mean, this star coming upon the planet. I mean, is there any other just writings or anything like that you're aware of that discuss this?
Since we're already in Genesis, I'll just go ahead and read this. This is called the Kolbrin Bible, or the Kolbrin text. The Kolbrin is known for it being like a parallel Bible to our modern day Bible. It was written by the Celtics, the Druids, and the Egyptians. It was passed down through generation to generation, and it wasn't even published until 2006. Now, if you haven't ever read this is a pretty amazing writing as far as historical references to the Bible. And then in Genesis, it talks about Noah's flood. Well, they have their own account of it in this text that describes the destroyer, or Planet X, coming back around and causing the flood and other horrible things. So if you wouldn't mind, I'd go ahead and read this short
Sure, go
passage on it. Then with the dawning, men saw an awesome sight. There riding on great black rolling clouds came the destroyer, newly released from the confines of the sky vault. And she raged about the heavens, for it was her day of judgment. The beast with her opened the beast with her opened. See, that was spelled wrong. The beast with her opened mouth and belched forth fire and hot stones and vile smoke. It covered the whole sky and sky above, and the meeting place of the earth and heaven could no longer be seen. In the evening, the places of the stars were changed. It rolled across the sky in new stations. So there we have the earth has tilted again. Then the flood waters came. The floodgates of heaven were opened. The foundations of the earth were broken apart. The surrounding waters poured over the land and broke upon the mountains. The storehouses of the winds burst their bolts asunder. So storms and whirlwinds were loosed to hurl themselves upon the earth. In the seething waters and howling gales, all buildings were destroyed. Trees were uprooted and mountains cast down. There was a time of great heat, then came a time of bitter cold. The waves over the waters did not rise or fall, but seethed and swirled. There was an awful sound above. The pillars of heaven were broken and fell down to earth. The sky vault was rent and broken. The whole creation was in chaos. The stars in heavens were loosed from their place, so they dashed about in confusion. There was a revolt on high. A new ruler appeared there and swept across the sky in majesty. Those who had not labored at the building of the great ship, and those who mocked the builders, came quickly to the place where it was lying, and climbed upon the ship and beat upon it with their hands. They raged and pleaded, but could not enter inside, nor could they break the wood. As the ship was borne up by the waters, it rolled, and they were swept off, for there was no foothold for them. The ship was lifted by a mighty surge of water and hurled among the debris. It was not dashed upon the mountain because of the place where it was built. All the people not saved within the ship were swallowed up in the midst of raging confusion. And their wickedness and corruption was purged away from the face of the earth. The swelling waters swept up the mountain tops and filled the valleys. They did not rise like water poured into a bowl, but came in great surging torrents. But when the tumult quieted and the waters became still, they stood no more. They stood no more than 3 cubits above the earth. The destroyer passed away into the vastness of heaven, and the great flood remained 7 days, until the day, or diminishing day by day, as the waters drained away to their places. Then the waters spread out calmly, and the great ship drifted amid a brown scum and debris of all kinds. After many days, the great ship came to rest. That's pretty much the last of it.
So basically it describes the destroyer is a name given to it in the sky, and it brings up, it comes in, shakes the earth, knocks it off its axis, participates in the big flood. So I guess my question is, and one of the things that kind of hangs me up a little bit, is if it's on a 390-year rotation or a 400-year rotation or whatever, why does it not cause these great calamities every time it comes in?
It just depends on when it comes back in, how close it actually gets to the earth. It could come in and not even really be more than just a star in the sky, but it'll still cause like famines and droughts.
Right.
But every time it comes back around, it doesn't necessarily cause great destruction. It also depends if we are caught in its tail, because it's like a comet, so it drags all kinds of debris behind it, including like very large meteorites,
right?
Which I believe may be what we saw in Russia, is some of that coming to pass.
With the meteors that exploded.
Over the top of Russia.
Like a couple of years ago, I think it was.
Yeah.
Why do you think? Because the reality is we're obviously living in the last days, or at the very beginning of the last days. I think that's indisputable with all the signs that we have, not just in the sky, but the things taking place here on Earth. If Planet X is going to be a part of that, that means it would have to be fairly close to us already.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that we can't look up to the sky and see it right now?
Because at the moment it is behind the sun, so you can actually see it on certain days if you go out in early morning for the sunrise or the sunset. There has been pictures taken of it. There's been satellite images of the sun that had images of the solar flare coming off the sun and illuminating one of these planets. But NASA is obviously not wanting people to know about this, so they scrub their images as soon as they have anything like that. But a couple images were leaked out, and there were people actually fired over it.
Man. I mean, if this is real, and I believe there's a lot of evidence to support that it is, well, what are the scientists saying about this? I mean, is there scientists that are coming forward and saying that this thing exists? And are they presenting any scientific evidence other than, because we have a lot of historical evidence, obviously, but is there scientific evidence for this?
Yeah, if you go do some research about 1980s, there was a huge uproar about finding the 10th planet, this mysterious Planet X. There's hundreds of articles and newspaper reports. They sent out a couple satellites to triangulate this thing, and as soon as they found it, all the information stopped. They said, "Oh well, it was just nothing's out there. We were mistaken," and then you don't hear anything else from then on. So they knew something was happening and knew something was coming, because there were disturbances in the gravitation of, I think it was Pluto and maybe a couple more planets, and so they set off to figure out what this was. Well, once they found it and knew what it was, they got all hush hush about it, because they don't want people to start freaking out.
Right. It makes me wonder if this thing has participated in why some of the planets rotate in the opposite direction, and just some of these other phenomena that are going on with the planets. But I've watched a lot of videos, a lot of YouTube studies, and things on this about how they were searching for this in the 80s, like you said. Thought that they had figured out where it was at least going to be coming from, based on the gravitational pulls and things of the other planets, and then now it's just kind of been like wrote off. Just like anything, you just just like the giants. We know for a fact that the giants exist. There's skeletons. There's historical evidence. The Bible tells us about it. But if you talk about that in the scientific community, they mark you off as a kook, kind of like they do conspiracy theorists today. They make it a bad word, and so if you even suggest that this stuff exists, you're a whack job.
Yeah, I mean, even most mainstream churches don't even want to talk about it.
No, well, they don't. Yeah, they don't want to talk about the giants. But that's actually in their Bible clearly multiple times. Much less talk about Planet X or the Destroyer. I think I found it here in 2nd Esdras. And it says, after this there shall be a stirred up great storms from the south and from the north, and another part from the west. And strong winds shall rise from the east, and shall shut it up, even the cloud which he raised up in wrath. And the star that was to cause destruction by the east wind shall be violently driven toward the south and to the west. And then it just goes on to talk about Babylon getting destroyed. So it's definitely in the ancient texts, folks. This star, like Michael said earlier, the Star of Bethlehem. It obviously wasn't a comet. It couldn't have been two planets lined up. I mean, in order for the wise men to make the travel that they made, this thing would have had to have been in the sky for a little longer than a comet flying through. You know what I mean? I mean, don't you agree, Michael? I mean, if a comet's flying past and I'm trying to follow that to find this king that's been born, I'm going to have a heck of a time trying. You
better get something faster than a camel.
Yeah, you're going to need a spaceship or something. So there was obviously something in the sky that was exceedingly bright that they were able to follow for weeks or months or however long it took to get to the Lord. So there's all kinds of evidence. One of the scriptures that I've often pondered on, and I'm going to try to find it here, and maybe you have a thought on this too. Let me pull it up here. I don't like to just wing it. Matthew 24:30. Then will appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then all the people of the earth will mourn when they see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Do you think the sign of the Son of Man, because we know a star, a great star, marked his birth, do you think the sign of the Son of Man could be Planet X?
I do, actually, because if you go a little further in Matthew 24 to verse 37, it talks about the days of Noah. So but as in the days of Noah, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. Well, we just went over what was in the days of Noah. So I believe, that this is his sign, that this planet returning in the sky will be the return of Christ. Because, let me see if I can find it real quick. It talks about, let's see, one second. Matthew 12 talks about the sign of Jonah. And if we go to 12 and read about it, he talks about, let's see real quick, can you flip over to 12 here. It says, but he answered the Pharisees and said unto them, an evil and adulterous generation seeks after a sign, but there shall be no sign given to him except the sign of the prophet Jonah. For Jonah was 3 days in the whale's belly, and so shall the Son of Man be in 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Well, the Jonah being in the whale's belly was representing Jesus going to the center of the earth or hell for 3 days. But nobody really talks about the sign that was the sign of Jonah. So if we go back to Jonah, let me go back to Jonah here real quick. In Jonah's time, this is another point in the Bible where this comes back around. So if we go to Jonah, and it also in the same time that Jonah's was going to Nineveh, we also have to go over to 2 Kings and Isaiah 38, which is the same event, same year that this happened with Jonah. And in 2 Kings, it talks about the sun moving backwards 10 degrees. Well, when they translated it, it says, it talks about a sundial going down on a sundial. Well, it can't move 10 degrees down on a sundial. because if the earth was to spin backwards, it would cause like extreme tidal waves or big giant tsunamis. But if the earth was to tilt, the translation for dial can actually be also translated as steps. So if you have a window and the sun's coming through your window and it moves back up your steps, the earth is tilting. But then also in 2 Kings, while that was happening, there was the battle with the Assyrians, and they were up against them. It was they were extremely outnumbered. But then the Lord showed up, or an angel showed up, and killed the Assyrian army. Let me find it, just read it to you real quick so you can get a better understanding for it. This is in 2 Kings 19. It says, "Therefore thus says the Lord concerning the king of Assyria, he shall not come into this city, nor shoot an arrow there, nor come before it with a shield, nor cast a bank against it. By the way that he came, by the same shall he return, and shall not come to the city, says the Lord. For I will defend the city to save it for my own sake, and for my servant David's sake. And it came to pass that night that the angel of the Lord went out and smote in the camp of the Assyrians 185,000. And they arose early in the morning, and behold, they were all dead corpses." Well, if you have to go do some really some digging on this subject. A lot of the old Jewish writers think that it was a disease that killed them, but there's also another camp where they believe fire from heaven came down and killed them. It didn't burn them up; it just came down and killed them, which is interesting because if you go back to Sodom and Gomorrah, when it was destroyed, it rained fire and brimstone. Well, when you light brimstone in an area, it creates like this toxic cloud. So it doesn't necessarily have to burn them up. If enough brimstone fell from the sky, it would create a cloud that basically suffocate everybody. So then we move. Let's see. So once they were defeated, the Assyrians, they retreated to Nineveh. And that was the same time that Jonah was around, going to Nineveh. So here's Jonah. He gets just swallowed by a whale, spit up on the shore, and he's told to go to Nineveh to tell them to repent, or the Lord's going to destroy you. So when Jonah finally made it to Nineveh, he didn't really have to perform any signs or miracles or anything. He just said, "Lord's going to destroy you," and he pointed up to the sky. Well, up in the sky, there's this, Planet X coming around. And the Assyrians had already had a taste of what that's like, so that everybody in Nineveh immediately just started repenting and just fell on their knees, and the Lord spared them. He didn't destroy them.
What about there's a scripture where there's a war going on, and they pray for the sun, or for the daylight to be extended. Is that the scripture that you were referring to?
That was, I know what you're talking about. Let me see if I can find that real quick.
Because I've often wondered about that one as well. Like, how is it possible for the daylight to be extended unless something else came into the area and was lighting up the sky? But then if it's that close to light up the sky, then you would have massive destruction.
Yeah, that was the battle with the Amorites. That was in Joshua 10.
Joshua, yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, it says, so Joshua ascended from Gilgad, and he and all his people of war went with him, and the mighty men of valor. So, and the Lord said unto Joshua, "Fear them not, for I have delivered them into thine hand. There shall not a man of them stand before thee." And it came to pass, they fled from before Israel. They were going down to Bertram, that the Lord cast great stones from heaven unto them, unto Ezekiel, and they died. There were more which died from the hailstones from the children. Hailstones than they whom the children of Israel slew with the sword. Then spake Joshua to the Lord in that day, and they delivered the Amorites for the children of Israel, and said, in the sight of Israel, sun, stand thou still, Gibeon, or stand thou still upon Gibeon, and thou moon in the valley of Ajalon. And the sun stood still, and the moon stayed until the people have avenged themselves upon the enemies. Is it not written in the book of Jasher? So the sun stood still amidst the heavens, and hath not gone down the whole day. Okay, so it basically, in Jasher, it restates pretty much everything that was in Joshua 10.
Right.
But if you notice, there's hail from, or fire from heaven.
Right.
And then you have the event of the sun standing still. Well, when Planet X comes back around, like we said about the magnet, it also has a plasma field around it. So if the planet aligns with our planet, its plasma field is much larger than the Earth. So the Earth's rotation stopped because the Earth entered into the Planet X's plasma field. And the effects will cause a compound rate of loss of rotation, roughly 4.15 to 5% per hour, compounded hourly, until the Earth stops. So what's amazing to me is that God knew exactly when he was going to say that prayer for the sun to stand still. And so it takes roughly 24 to 48 hours for this to stop the Earth. So God actually had this already in motion before he even prayed the prayer.
Right. And what's also interesting is there's just another example of the Bible canon quoting from a book that's been removed from the Bible. That just cracks me up, because there it is, quoting from Jasher. Oh man. So basically, there's evidence that at some point in history, and we've basically just been using the Bible, really haven't got into any of the a lot of the scientific stuff, or even other culture stuff that much. I mean, just the Bible alone gives an example of some crazy phenomenon taking place in the heavens. We know at some point it's called a star, because Second Esdras calls it a star and says people are going to be afraid of it. And it causes destruction, which is why it's given the name the Destroyer. We know there's a significant star because we have the Star of Bethlehem. Something obviously caused the flood. The earth doesn't just get knocked off its axis, just by happenstance. Something causes that to happen. And so let's talk about what we're expecting to be happening here in the near future. Because it's the belief of those who believe that Planet X exists is that we should be seeing it appearing in the sky before long. At some point, if this thing is coming into our solar system, there won't be any hiding or, editing images. Because you'll be able to see it with the naked eye. Wouldn't you think?
Yeah. At some point, it's going to be beyond the capacity of the government to keep us from our knowledge. That's why some people also believe that that's why they spray so much chemtrails in the sky. It's so you're not looking up anymore, because there's always a cloud cover over you. So, if you spray chemtrails all day long, and then by the time sunset sets in, the cloud's completely covered and you can't see anything anyway. So people, I believe, are being programmed to just quit looking up. and looking at the sky, because these things are coming, and it's just gonna bring destruction with it.
And you think the reason why we can't just get out a telescope right now and check it out, like let's say in the middle of the night, is because where it's coming from, it's being blocked out by the sun?
Yeah, the orbit of it right now is somewhere near the sun. You can't really say, on 100% of where exactly its location is. But the best time to try to catch it would be sunrise or sunset.
And the reason why the scientific community even started looking for this thing was because they were noticing crazy gravitational phenomenons taking place with other planets in our solar system, right? So the only conclusion you can draw is there's something pulling these guys, or tugging on these guys, that's causing this problem to happen. So if, just basic common sense says there must be another entity somewhere nearby or approaching in order to cause this to happen. Do you think that part of the reason why governments around the world, like Russia and the United States, have built complete cities underground and in the mountains is because they know this thing is coming?
Oh yeah, for sure. Because we got the Denver airport here, and just the whole construction of it was just absolutely unreal. There's a guy named Lucas who does a pretty good job of describing all this. His website is rabbithole2.com, I believe is what it is. And he goes into just an amazing amount of detail on that whole subject with Planet X.
Do you think it's related to the Sixth Seal?
Oh yeah. With the Sixth Seal, what is fascinating is, people are talking about these blood moons and how these are the signs of the Sixth Seal. Well, I don't believe that's the exact sign we're looking at right now, because it says the sun will be darkened and the moon will be turned to blood in one passage before the tribulation, and then there's another passage where you can read and it says that it's after the tribulation. So I believe we're seeing the signs that are before the tribulation, and when Planet X arrives, it'll be the return of Christ coming in the sky with power and great glory. But when this thing finally gets here, it'll actually block out the sun, causing the sun to turn dark. Well, the Planet X has its own sun, and it's a lot of people speculate that it's a brown dwarf or a colder star, so it's not as bright as our star. So when this thing comes back around, it's been described as having a dark red glow in some of the ancient texts, and so when it blocks out the sun, it'll glow like this dark red. So when it'll cast that light onto the moon as a red color.
So you think, and you might be right about this, and I've been pondering this a lot lately. So you think what we're seeing right now in the signs is what Joel's talking about when he says, the moon will be turned to blood and the sun will be turned black before the great and terrible day of the Lord.
Yes, it's what we're seeing. That's what we're seeing now.
Right. So there's our warning. Hey, the great and terrible day of the Lord is on the way. It's coming.
Mm-hmm.
Here's your warning sign. And you think the Sixth Seal, where we see a similar event taking place, where the suns turn black, the moons turn to blood, but also accompanied by a massive earthquake. The Bible calls it a great earthquake, which I don't think is some 9.0 earthquake. I think when the Bible points out a great earthquake, I think it's something that we're all gonna feel, probably all around the world. So
yeah, it says every man and creature that crawls on the earth will feel this earthquake.
So the people, let me just pull up the Sixth Seal here, because and I'll just ask you as I'm pulling this up, do you think that what they're freaking out about and why they're hiding is the star, the sign of the Son of Man? Do you think that's what that's what's got them all wanting to hide in the mountains.
Yeah, because that's what they're doing. It says that the great man and the rich man and every free man will hide themselves in the mountains and say to the mountains, "Fall on us, for the wrath of the Lamb has come." Well, if you think about that, it's God coming into the sky with power and glory, but it's also He's using this planetary system as a form of judgment during the Book of Revelation.
Yeah, that sure makes sense. I mean, Jesus tells us there's going to be a sign of the Son of Man. Immediately when I think, what's the sign of the Son of Man, I think of the Star of Bethlehem. I mean, that's where my brain goes. We have this thing. We have something that's taking place that's causing people to freak out, and it's only the sixth seal. Some people think this is the return of Christ, and I'm like, it's not, because it's the sixth seal, and the seventh seal encapsulates the trumpets. So Jesus clearly hasn't come back. Jesus is not coming back to set up his kingdom and then unleashing the trumpets and then unleashing the vials. Clearly, the sixth seal is taking place before Jesus' return. So what these people are freaking out about can't be because Jesus has just returned to the earth. There has to be some. We may know it's of God, but it's something different. And in Luke 21:26 through 30 tells us that men's hearts are going to fail them from fear and expectations of those things which are coming on the earth. And then it says, for the powers of heaven will be shaken. So something's happening in our heavens that's causing a great shaking, and men are going to be so freaked out about it that they're going to be having heart attacks. I mean, that's what it's saying. Men's hearts fail them. I mean, what's it mean when your heart fails you? You have a heart attack. People are going to fall over dead. They're so afraid. And I think there's more to it. And it says, then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with great power and glory. I think there's more to it. I think they're going to see demonic presences, and just like the times of Noah, we're going to see all of this incredibly scary and wicked beast and men and crazy things taking place. But also the Bible is very clear that there's something going on in the heavens. I mean, it's so bloody obvious. So you think the sixth seal and if you look at this in the King James version, the New King James version, it gives like the headlines before the scriptures. You know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. Like it says the sixth seal, and then it gives like an explanation, and it says cosmic disturbances. There's something. I need to pull it up in the Amplified. Let me do that real quick.
Okay, while you're doing that, I'm going to read something real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
Jesus' crucifixion. Right before that, in Matthew 12, is describing to the Pharisees that you will see the sign. You won't see anything no signs come to pass until you see the sign of Jonah. Well, he was actually talking about himself, because during his crucifixion, he was crucified on Passover. Passover is accompanied with the new moon, so the moon was on the other side of the earth at the time of his crucifixion. But if you read in Matthew 24, I'm sorry, let's see, that's not it. Here it is. It is in Luke. It talks about his crucifixion. And it says, about the 6th hour, there was darkness over all the earth until the 9th hour. There you have a 3-hour eclipse of the entire earth. A normal eclipse of the sun can only last roughly 7 minutes. And it says the sun was darkened, and the veil of the temple was rent amidst. Well, if you go to Matthew 27, verse 50, it says, Jesus then cried out with a loud voice and yielded up the ghosts. And behold, the temple was rent in twain from top to bottom, and the earth did quake, and the rocks rent. So there we have the sun turning dark, the great earthquake, and it's just that was his sign. That was the sign of Jonah that he was talking about. That was the sign. And then he also descended into hell from that point for 3 days. So there was also the other sign of being within the whale, which is just something just to take note of, which is just extremely fascinating.
Yeah, and I mean, if you start piecing it all together, and I'm trying to do this in my mind here, I mean, you've got the Star of Bethlehem, Jesus is born. You've got the sun blotted out, and a great earthquake at the point of Jesus' crucifixion. Jesus tells us that you'll see the sun, or you'll see the sign of the Son of Man. Then we've got Revelation 6, which talks about God's wrath is beginning to be poured out. You know, after the sixth seal, that's when God's wrath really starts. That's when you get the trumpets and everything like that. And right before that, the sun's blackened. There's a great earthquake. And then, of course, the moon's turned to blood. Second Esdras tells us that there's going to be a star that's going to come. It's going to bring destruction. People are going to be freaking out about it. I pulled this up in the Amplified, and it says, let me get down to the... So, when the Lamb broke open the sixth seal, I looked, and there was a great earthquake, and the sun grew black as sackcloth hair. The full disk of the moon became like blood, and the stars of the sky dropped to the earth like a fig tree shredding its unripe fruit out of season when shaken by a strong wind. And I don't know if that's symbolic for, you know, angelic beings or demons, or if it's literally meteors falling to the earth. The sky was rolled up like a scroll and vanished, and every mountain and island was dislodged from its place. So in order for there to be all of this chaos to the point where mountains and islands are dislodged, and the sky looks like it's rolled up like a scroll, and we've got things falling to the earth like a fig tree, something insane has just taken place in the heavens. I mean, of course people are going to try to hide. I mean, it's going to be terrifying. I mean, don't you think?
Oh, yeah.
Frightening.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely frightening. I mean, it's just an interesting topic. You're hard pressed to read prophecy and read the Bible and read the catastrophic events that have taken place, like with Noah's flood and all that, and not come to the conclusion that some very strange things have taken place in the cosmos at some point. And the Bible clearly tells us in the book of Revelation that it's going to be that way again. So whether it's Planet X or something else, there's something coming in the heavens that's going to shake, I think, everybody's worldview about everything that they've ever thought. Just in wrapping it up, because we're approaching an hour here, is there anything else that you think's worth pointing out, in as far as this discussion is concerned?
There's so much to this. I just encourage everybody to go out and just research everything you can get your hands on, because we've only barely scratched the surface of this, and it's just, I will try to provide you with the most, resources that I've used, and to try to lead you on your own journey to discovering, Planet X, because just in an hour's time, it's just, we can barely even scratch the surface of this whole thing.
Right. And if you go to truthfed.com and there's a little search box on the right-hand side where you can search for keywords. If you just type in Planet X, you're going to see all kinds of videos that just go into some really in-depth information about this. Have you seen the trailer for the Mophie? I think it's a cell phone, Mophie 2015, where it just shows like all the metal, just like a huge gravitational pull disaster coming upon the Earth. Have you seen that by chance?
Yeah, I did. It's been a while, so I vaguely remember. It was like was it the sun that was pulling everything in?
Yeah, something like that. And basically it's just like a quick trailer of what it looks like. It's just amazing, and I think that stuff's on purpose. But that video's up there. There's a video titled Earth Tilted, and it has this disc that was found that shows, basically, it's an ancient disc that was found, and it shows like our solar system, but with an additional massive planet, which there's a lot of that kind of stuff out there, too, if people go research it. There's lots of, basically, people find pottery and things like that show this planet, or show like there's Egyptian drawings of people like scared of this big star thing that's coming into the Earth. There's a video called Planet X, Is It Real? And that gives great information. So there's just tons. And then there's this, we scratched the surface on how in the 80s they were searching for this thing. There's a video called Dr. Robert Harrington Confirming Planet X. That video's up there. I did a podcast not too long ago called Strong Delusions, Coming of the Last Days, Aliens, UFOs, and Fallen Angels. I talk about Planet X in that. Vatican astronomers also believe Jesus was the star child. There's so much information that's available. Steve Quayle and Tom Horn do a discussion about this on the Hagman show. That video's up there. So there's endless information just on my website, and if you seek out some of the people who've really done a good job of this, you'll be pretty convinced that this thing exists. So, well, Michael, that was it was a fun discussion, and well, I'm sure though if listeners have questions, they can send them all to me, Sean@truthfed.com, and then maybe we can put another show together where we just kind of go through some of these questions, or if you discover something else that you think is worth having a conversation about, then we can definitely do that. But I appreciate you coming on and just kind of sharing some of your knowledge on this subject.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Sean. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. All right, that wraps it up, folks. I'll be back with you probably on Wednesday, and not sure what we're going to be talking about. It just depends on where God leads us. But make sure that you share this episode with those who may need to know, who've never even heard of such a thing. It really, I think there's just a lot of good information in there. So thanks for listening. Peace and grace be with you, and God bless.